Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we getting on? Welcome to a brand new camp build, and today we are working on a lore-friendly kind of junkyard sort of a build that is a spot that I've wanted to build at for absolutely ages, but only recently discovered it was possible. So let's jump to it. Okay, so yeah, we sort of found this place again when I was on stream last week, and in the past you couldn't build here, but apparently Bethesda have changed that, so really happy about this. I know a few other people have built here as well, but thought I'd finally fulfill my ambition and take on the spot. So let's have a look where we are. You can see, right in the middle of the forest here, not too far away from the starting area. If we get this sorted out, let's have a look. Yep, there's our little junkyard. Move over there is Vault 76, just over there, and Point Pleasant on this side. So if you're actually looking for this spot, the easiest way to find it is to follow this road. You can either head down from Black Mountain Ordnance Works there, or up from Alpine River Cabins, and it's just off to the side there. There's a big Nuka-Cola sign and stuff out there, so you kind of can't miss it. Really cool spot. So we've got lots and lots of junk walls already in place, but a lot of gaps in them as well. So we're going to have to sort out the fortifications first and foremost. And it's one of the biggest things in terms of the building side of things. So obviously, you'll see in a few places here that Bethesda obviously didn't intend this place to be built up and shored up, or they weren't really thinking about it when they designed the place, because the gaps aren't quite the right size for filling up, but such is the way of things. Can't expect them to think of every possible thing we could build. So we can get these fairly close, but there's a few tiny gaps as well. Most part you can't really notice, but it's also fairly organic. There's some funny angles and stuff going on as well, you can sort of see here. But it really does create a kind of organic junkyard kind of vibe, or junk pile might be a better word. There's a load of rubbish here. So we'll close this little gap up. I tried a few different options to try and seal this one off, and it didn't go spectacularly well, so I ended up settling on just leaning a barbed wire fence up against the gap. Some of the others came out considerably better. There are quite a few of these spots that need sealing up, but I'm going to skip over a couple of them because it's basically the same thing as we've already done here. And we'll move on in just a moment to the largest gap, and then you sort of see how I approach that one. Yeah, my sort of goal here is that somebody's come wandering along, some wasteland survivor, and decided, oh look, there's an absolute heap of building materials here, and the place has already been started, clearly post-war, judging by the junk walls here. And they've decided, right, let's set up shop here. So when you see the final thing, you'll see sort of where that mentality would have come from. But we'll get to that in a minute. For now, this is the largest gap in the fences over here. It's sort of on the side that faces down the road towards Alpine River Cabins and everything down that way. But we've got a lot of junk just piled up here, and I'm going to kind of make it look reasonably organic and make sure we have as much space available as possible inside the walls by following the edge of the junk pile here. Unfortunately, it's a bit awkward in places because some of the junk clips under the ground and continues underneath, which interferes with the placement of a few things. These chain link fences that came with the Haunted House kit are absolutely fantastic for this job because they're so much more flexible than so many of the pieces we have available. They are much, much more forgiving about their placement, so for a few little awkward spots like that one actually ended up being, they're really good for that. Plus you can dress them up quite well and they blend into a lot of scrappier builds as well, so that's always cool. You use them for a lot of different things, so I do like those things. So we're going to mix up the junk walls a little bit, try and alternate things and generally make it so it's not too uniform. Nudge that one onto the edge. You can see the way that was sinking through the ground and then jumped up there. There we go. I could try and sort of squeeze a bit further back into that gap. There's not really a lot of point with this pile of rubbish on the right here, so we'll just follow the edge of this. Grab another junk wall, mix this one up a little bit. Just nudge it forward a bit. These actually made an appearance in the Atomic Shop again quite recently, so hopefully a few of you managed to pick them up then. If not, I'm sure they'll reappear eventually. They're an absolute must, in my opinion, in terms of sort of scrappy, somewhat fortified wasteland camps. These sort of simpler ones are particularly good for pressing up against other objects because a collision on them is a little bit more reasonable than some of the more complex looking junk fences, so they're really good for gaps like that. Now for little stuff like this, a half-size chain link fence plugs that gap very nicely, and nice soft edges on it work really well. So actually on stream the other day we found somebody else who was camping here, which was very cool. They also used the mobile home trailer as well. And we're basically going to go with something broadly similar to what they did. I'd originally thought to put it on this side, which is sort of the side nearest Vault 76, but this mess on the floor here, this black stuff, is radioactive. It's actually around in a couple of places in here, so something to keep an eye out for. It's not actually inside the trailer, but it kind of appears there when you place it on that side. So I decided to move it over to this side rather than have half the place be useless. Also, it just looks better when it's over here. Like, the space available just works a little better with the trailer on this side. Explaining that clearly is rather difficult, beyond simply saying it looks better, but yeah, that's the main thing, I suppose. So we'll nudge that back up against this big tank behind it and push it as far into the little gap there as we can. We'll do a little bit of dressing this up before we move on to some of the other larger structures. Because now that we've got the place walled off, the big stuff is where I'm going to start with, literally in terms of the size of the objects. And then we'll move on to dressing it up in the decoration phase with lots and lots of little bits of junk. The goal there will be to make it look like we haven't actually decorated at all, or it's not too much anyway, in some areas, and to make it look sort of more organic and like a junk pile. But I want to board this window off. As it turned out, weirdly, it worked really well. That boards just popped straight back into the gap there, which I wasn't expecting at all. And they sit neatly over the window, which is exactly what I wanted, so I will take it. Very, very strange, but hey, if it's going to do exactly what I want, sort of unintentionally, for want of a better way of putting it, then yeah, I'm not going to complain too much. So there we go. You see with the trailer behind us now, we have a nice big open space here to work with. Plan A for my crafting space here was to use this canopy, the vault canopy here, and then put my benches just directly underneath it to make it look, again, like the junk pile vibe. Two things went slightly wrong with that. Firstly, this canopy is basically useless. It's not the right size to fit on any foundations, really, so that's always annoying. And apparently anything that's more than about a foot tall, you can't fit underneath it either, because collision and so on and so forth. So I ended up giving up on that. The other thing is, I don't really like the way the workbenches look when they're just direct on the ground either. Something about it just doesn't look right. So we're going to put some foundations in. Started with these wooden ones, and they snap straight through that pile of logs quite conveniently. They're actually, you can put an extractor on those logs if you happen to want to use a wood extractor. And there's a junk extractor as well here, but the positioning is a bit iffy for making sure you've got the junk walls inside the build area, so I decided not to consider that. But yeah, now we've got these foundations in, well, put some railings on just to enclose it. I'm not going to clip them through that pile of logs there, but clipping them around the back like that looks okay. And we'll drop in the workbenches to get sort of an idea of what we're going to do. I'm actually going to swap these wooden foundations out for the concrete ones. Mostly because I'm putting an armor bench on here, and the wooden ones always look to my eye like they're going to catch fire. So, there's the armor bench. Stick it over by the entrance here. You can see that burning barrel type thing at the end. Yeah. It just looks like it's going to set the whole thing on fire, so we'll switch it out to a stone texture. Yeah, texture. I was going to say wallpaper, but it's the floor. You know what I mean. But you still get the wooden footstep sounds when you're moving around on it, which is kind of jarring when you've got a stone-looking surface to it, so we'll swap them out for concrete later on. Let's get this last couple of bits and pieces in. I'm going to go over this side. It'll just look a little better over there, I think. And then we'll grab the Tinker's Bench. There we go. And tuck that one on over on this side. So I'm going to need to dress this place up a little bit more during the decoration phase, but we can generally see what we're working with now. We'll adjust that Tinker's Bench just a little bit. It's a little too far to the left. Nudge it over a little. It's actually off-centre there, but with the position of the other workbenches, it looks better that way. And there we go. So the last thing I'm going to do building-wise is to put a little power armor crafting spot just here, and then we'll head on to decorating, which, as I said before, the goal is going to be to make it look organically junky, but also like somebody's moved in, shoved a lot of stuff out of their way, and made it livable. But it's still basically a junk pile with all the stuff they didn't use in it. So, let's have a look at the tour. So I thought I'd start down here on the road for this tour now that I've decorated everything. Basically because this place is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, look at that view. I absolutely love that Nuka-Cola billboard as well. Very, very cool. And the little sign in the middle school too. And it also gives you a little idea of exactly where it is and what to look out for if you're looking for the spot as you're coming up the road. Yeah, really cool. Idea is that the inhabitant of this location has seen that they've got tons of building materials just piled up here, abandoned in this junk heap, and has gone, great, well, let's move in. And just grabbed what they can and started building the place up and making it livable. So as we pan around this front side, we can head towards the gate. You can see the existing junk walls just shored up with all the extra bits and pieces I've added. I've actually tucked the camp unit just outside the walls on this side, so hopefully when we fast travel in we'll arrive in a sensible place. But we'll have to wait and see. I haven't had the occasion to test that yet. So this blue gate was already in place. In fact, it's usually open when you arrive here, when you load in, but I closed it for the sake of the tour. And we'll head on inside. So there we go. I fenced off this little area behind the trailer, mostly because there's a lot of junk there that you can't build over very easily anyway. It really limits what you can do, so I figured we'll fence it off and just say that the person living here has dragged all the stuff they didn't use and just chucked it in a heap back there and then fenced it off to create kind of walkway here. Whereas this bit is kind of clearer and tidier as it's the main way into the camp. There's actually a back gate that we'll have a look at in a moment, but this is the main way in. There we go. Loads of stash boxes and other bits and pieces of appliances and just random stuff put at interesting angles, try to make sure it didn't float. Just dumped in there to make it look really scrappy and like a junk heap. Again, just dragged loads of bits and pieces off to the side to just texture up the walls, make the place look a little more interesting, a bit more organic. And we'll come into the main living area, I suppose, of the camp. Those little brambles that I've put around really kind of pull the sort of separate parts of the decoration together quite nicely. It makes it look like the environment's growing back around the junk that's here, which is quite a nice effect, and it really dressed it up quite well. Before I put those in, it looked kind of unfinished, and they made a really big impact for something so simple, so worth keeping an eye on. Got a whole load of heap of stuff around the radiation barrels there. Those are already in place, but the trailers and the stash boxes and tables and stuff are heaped up to make it look really junky and scrappy and like it's been piled up there. Little cooking station in the middle. We had a big open space, so I needed something in there. So drop the fireplace in there, cooking station on the top, a couple of chairs, and then some plushies for the lols. That truck obviously was there already, but I've piled some extra stuff in the truck bed at the back to make it look a bit more chunky. Chuck the chemical toilets in there, a few other bits and pieces around as well. We'll have a look at our little crafting area. So I added a few stash boxes and a little bit of extra decoration here just to make it a bit more interesting. You'll see right at the back there I actually closed up a gap as well. This is a tiny bit too clean in my opinion for the rest of the build. But as I said earlier, if you put the workbenches just straight on the ground, they don't look right either, so it's kind of a bit of a struggle. I'm wondering whether or not I should use the dungeon floors instead, because they look a little bit more dirty and broken and beaten up. But even then, I'm not sure how far that would actually go. However, it is easy enough to move around, it's functional, we've got everything we need there. And a few little lights around to light up that Brotherhood statue, which we needed a centerpiece for this spot for some, to kind of complete it, you know? So, I wanted some lighting on that. I've got a couple of extra bits and pieces just piled up in front of the logs here. That back end of a car is a random Fallout First thing that appeared a while ago, so there's not much use for it, but it dresses up a big gap here, along with this Fusion Flea car there as well. There's a fairly standard little power armor station dressed up there. As we come around the back of the trailer here, again, this is kind of an awkward space because there's a bit of radiation around here. There's also, you can't really build much here. The gaps aren't as big as they look, which is interesting. But it's a good place to cram in bits and pieces of junk and a bit of functionality as well. So we've got the Symptomatic and the Decon Arch there. A heap of stuff just piled in the back here to make it look a bit more interesting and junky. I really like the way that satellite dish works at the back, actually. There's our Collectron tucked in the back corner. He's got a bit of room to move in that corner. And we've got some access to the collection point on the station there as well. A few other bits and pieces of junk piled up around, and another chemical toilet there. Because we need to go to the bathroom somewhere, and around or out of the way seemed like a good place to have the functional one. So a couple of bits and pieces dressing up that trailer again. We'll move back to the front. You can see I've got a few street lights in here, and I have actually wired these up. Normally I avoid having trailing wires, but I didn't mind too much with this one. They kind of run around the outside, which is alright, and it sort of blends with the rest of the junky vibe. Gives us a bit of extra light around the spot during the evenings as and when we need. And there we go. Dressed up the front surface of the mobile home trailer to make it look a little more like somebody's living here and a little bit nicer. Somebody's going to move in, they're going to make it a bit more homely. The vendor on the left there. We like dressing up the stairs and stuff a little bit, making that entrance a bit more welcoming. Switched up the doors as usual, just dropped in the regular door and then switched it out for something a bit different. That's actually the one from the Wildwood Den, just to make it, again, slightly different and a bit more junky. And I've gone to town on the decoration in here. There's a weird thing about the inside of this place. You really have to go busy to kind of hide the walls. And if you don't, I find it looks kind of unfinished, in my opinion, but there we go. So I went absolutely nuts with throwing as much stuff as I possibly could on the wall here. Decided to cover up the window at the end because it's with the bed it looked like it needed sealing up a bit more. This middle section was kind of difficult to find something to do, so I squeezed the foosball table in there for a bit of fun. I've got a nice little seating area around here. Loads of plushies on display, loads and loads of stuff on the wall again, just to make it look a bit more complete, a lot busier and more homely. A radio in there so you can hang out, listen to the radio. Of course, I went and forgot to put any magazines on the magazine racks, which is kind of typical. And they actually do add an interesting splash of colour again to the decoration, so it's kind of unfortunate, but you can use your imagination there. It does look quite cool, this, I think. Yeah, I really like going absolutely crazy with the decoration in this place. It really brings it to life and makes it much more homely. And it also kind of works with bringing the junkyard inside without losing that homely vibe, which is the goal. So, quite like how that's come out. So we'll pan back on outside. Close up the door, be neat and tidy. Yeah, definitely like the look of this place. They add a few extra bits and pieces to decorate up the vendor there. Just the open sign so you can find it, and just a few bits to just texture up and bring it to life and stuff. Have a look at this trailer bed here. Annoyingly, I can't plant in it anymore, or so it would seem. It's just been a bit awkward about placing things, but for a big object that fills up a big gap and I can just dump stuff on top of, it really works for this sort of a build. Which was generally the vibe. Scrappy, but kind of livable and lived in, and I'm really happy with how it came out. So let's have a little look at this place from the cliff edge as well, because there's a really nice view up there. But for now, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, please do consider dropping subs and likes. I do very, very much appreciate it. If you head down below the video, in the description you'll find social media links, the merch store, and channel memberships as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in that way, I very, very much appreciate that as well. It really, really helps out. A massive thank you to everyone who's done that already. And if you get the chance, do join us for live streams as well. We are, of course, playing Fallout 76, and we're playing Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice as well at the moment, and we've got some other cool stuff lined up for the summer and the rest of the year, and of course Starfield at the end of the year. So do join us for those. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to speaking to you all very, very soon.